Welcome to It Takes Two.
I'm Clarissa, the couples therapist.
And I'm Charles, the marketing professor, talking shop on relationships, mental health, and
the psychology of Christmas and how businesses and families use it to influence our behavior.
Do you know why Santa wears bright red? Or why Christmas movies just hit different during December? We'll answer that and more.
We will also share a fun date idea and connection question you can use with your partner to take your relationship to the next level. So make sure to stay tuned till the end.
Clarissa, I have a question for you and for the listeners. What are the first things, word association game, what are the first things that come to your mind when I say the word Christmas?
Red, green, snow, Christmas lights, trees, fir trees specifically.
Yeah.
Cozy fireplace.
Oh, yeah.
But yet cold sleigh ride.
Nice, yeah.
Family, food. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. The first thing that pops in my mind is that jingle. Dun 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 dun. Anyway, yeah, that
was great.
And specifically the Pentatonics one, which is phenomenal.
It is.
But yeah, I also think of presents and stockings.
Yeah.
And candy.
Shopping then, probably. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, shopping. Candy, like
candy,
peppermint canes, hot cocoa. I think of snowmen and snow women. And like sledding. Just a lot of wintry things when I think of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is that? Why is it when I say the word Christmas, our brains erupt in this cacophony of ideas and sounds and tastes and smells?
Nostalgia. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me with all that is like, how could I summarize that into like one little thing? It's not little, it's actually quite big, but like one operation of your brain, and it's nostalgia.
This podcast only provides information. It's not a viable replacement for a therapy session. If you need help or have an emergency, contact your local mental health authority. Our hosts are experts on mental health. Many of our guests are too. This podcast does not provide expert advice. It's just entertainment, baby. Dates, and places have changed. This podcast should never replace real therapy.
When we hear the word nostalgia, we just immediately, word association again, we probably just think like, oh, fond memories or the good times, but nostalgia is a lot more in depth than that.
Yeah. I honestly think that like Christmas is a whole holiday and time of year built off of nostalgia that came from like traditions and things like that. So let me explain. The nostalgia is like a bittersweet but mostly positive emotion. It's a coping mechanism for stress, loneliness, transitions. It's basically a way to create personal continuity and eases feelings of discontinuity and disconnected. So it regulates pain as well. So the reason why I say that is that Christmas is during this part of the year. This is my perception. I actually didn't read this anywhere. Like, this is what I connected when I thought of the brain functions of nostalgia, is that Christmas is this time of year where it's dark and it's in a transition. It's the end of the year and people are lonely in the winter. And so boom, born Christmas.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring
And
that up.
like people further it because it's, yeah, sorry.
Right. No. Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I did a little research before with the origination of the holiday. So and to that point, the end of fall across civilizations really was like all the traditions have these roots in the end of the harvest for fall. But one of the ones that say it was likely Roman was to celebrate the end of the fall harvest. And who doesn't want to celebrate after a long season of work, right? Like who doesn't want to party and be like, yeah, we're done with this year of labor that we put in. So I do think today we also feel that sense like, oh, what a relief. I can put off a lot of this work until January.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Totally. But this is crazy. But during this week-long period, it was a week-long celebration of lawlessness.
Whoa.
Lawlessness. During this period, Roman courts were closed, and Roman law dictated that no one could be punished for damaging property or injuring people during that week-long celebration. It's the Purge Christmas edition. But legit, like actually happened.
What years are these? Like, do you know?
I didn't write that down.
That's all right. We'll look it up later.
During the Roman Empire, which I think about daily.
Apparently.
But no, for real, it's so that is so bonkers because this notion of Christmas we have now is everyone comes together and it's family and friends and love and happiness. But back then it was like,
The Purge.
let's fucking rage. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Let's, we've been confined and restricted to our labors all year. Let's just go crazy. And that's what Christmas honestly sounds a little bit more fun. No, I'm just teasing.
Oh my.
Total joke. Obviously, there were also some pagan traditions associated with the winter solstice, but that does connect with this ending, and that's the word you used was transition, this ending of one period of time and transitioning into the next. So your perception was actually pretty close to what was historical.
Wow. I would be so fascinated. Maybe you want to share now or like later on in the pod, but like how did it turn from like that the Purge to what we know Christmas as today? Do you know that?
Yeah. Good question. So originally there was still this festivity surrounding the end of the harvest for thousands of years, but it really began to change so this is my notes here. It says some sociologists suggest that Christmas was revitalized or re-emphasized in more modern times to offset the despair, cold, and darkness of the deathly winters as a survival and coping mechanism. And then only later were those festivities commercialized in the early 1900s to include gift giving and what we know of it as it today. Because prior to that, it really was just like you said, like it's dark, it's cold, people are dying, there's disease, there's all this, hardship. So let's do something so we don't lose our minds.
Wow.
But now it has evolved into this very commercialized nostalgia profit machine, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I got some notes for that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, really interesting. I just genuinely think like the idea behind traditions, like Christmas is a tradition. Like there's no other reason why we do it other than it's tradition. It's just what you do. And that is where what I'm saying is like the main points of nostalgia is like we only keep perpetuating traditions because they make us feel a type of way because of the past. So I think there's some tricky things to that, which I'll get into, but I wanted to share the brain science behind it, which it's managed by the parts in your brain that are involved in memory, emotion, reward, self-reflection, and then autobiographical memory, which is memory. How do I describe this? it's funny because like an autobiography book is like what most people know that word from, which is just like a retelling of somebody's life. So your autobiographical memory is basically going back into like snap pictures of specific times during your life.
Yeah, isn't that kind of that also that neurological effect where you either look back at a memory with a halo effect where you remember it better than it actually was in the moment. You kind of forget all the hard things and it's just like this glowy, warm fuzz, or the opposite where there were good things that happened, but all you remember is like one specific terrible thing. And so that whole event is shrouded in pain. And like, what is that? I can't remember for the life of me what that's called.
I would say that would be, that's not, okay. I would say like that's adjacent to nostalgia.
Okay.
Because it uses the same brain functions, but different.
Okay.
Because it does include like fear things or like things that are bad. And nostalgia is mostly like positive, like
Gotcha.
longing for the positivity in the past, I suppose.
Gotcha. So if I think back on a memory and I remember it fondly, that's that autobiographical component of nostalgia. And there's something that happens in the brain when we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, all of nostalgia is triggered by the metabolic activity and blood flow when you hear a familiar sound or smell a familiar smell or see a keepsake, have a conversation, or experience feelings of loneliness. It can trigger nostalgia, which I told you this beforehand, but it's a really interesting fun fact. Your brain uses 20% of your body's metabolic energy, even at rest.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't a lot about nostalgia. It's just really interesting.
That's great. So just tangent, because I do feel like if I'm doing a lot of brain work, like researching or studying or preparing for a class, I feel way more physically tired. Is that because like in that 20% range, if you're thinking a lot more, do you use more energy? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I actually didn't I'm not quite a neuroscientist, so I feel like I didn't read whether it ranges, but I would assume it does.
I would imagine it would. Yeah.
I would imagine it does.
Yeah. Interesting. But wow, 20% of your caloric intake is used on that 4-pound blob of neurons in your skull. That's crazy.
Yes.
Wow.
So basically, I'll break down the science of it, but I would say like in general, there's like 3 brain functions that nostalgia works off of, which is the cognitive, which is the retrieval of your memories, the affective, which is the negative emotion. How do I put it? Trying to avoid negative emotions or experiences like fear, anxiety, loss, like trying to regulate like the survivability, you could say. And then the conative, which is the desire. So like desire for the past or longing for those traditions or experiences, memories, things like that.
Okay.
So there's the hippocampus, which is your learning, memory, and emotion. And that's part of the limbic system. It regulates your motivation. Its main function is to store your short-term memories to long-term. And then your amygdala, which is your emotions, fear, and motivation. It connects emotions to memories. So that's kind of the thing that I was saying that you had said, like seeing or thinking of a memory and having an emotion. That's like all work by your amygdala.
Okay.
And then it also controls like learning and senses. So like also taking your senses and connecting those to like memories.
And so these areas of the brain evoke a physiological response, meaning you have a physical reaction. There are chemicals released into your body just by remembering something.
Yeah.
Experiencing nostalgia is a physical experience.
Yes.
Which is wild because you could basically trigger it at any moment.
Yeah.
Or just you smell peppermint or you smell hot cocoa and it's just like
reminds you of something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I wanted to describe the amygdala by talking about OCD, because we've talked about this a lot, because I was diagnosed with OCD this year, whole thing. But basically, when you think about it in these terms, like mental health wise, my OCD has made associations, like fear associations, with a bunch of different things. And that's all work of my amygdala, like creating, like, if I smell that smell, hear that sound, whatever, then that equals like fear and panic. Anyway, panic is a big part of like an amygdala hijack is what they call it. And there's actual like scientific evidence that if you breathe slower and deeper, you can stop an amygdala hijack.
Okay, so when Uncle Todd starts making very hyperbolized political statements at Christmas dinner, and I start experiencing an amygdala hijack, I just have to start breathing slowly
and deeper.
Yeah. So I don't start panicking.
That can help, yes.
Okay. Love you, Uncle Todd.
Oh my gosh. And then
I don't have an Uncle Todd. I have an Uncle Tom who I love dearly, but
not a Todd.
Somebody out there has an Uncle Todd who gets what I'm saying.
Yes. The ventral striatum, which I'm trying to remember from my neuroscience class if that's exactly how you say it, but that's all good. It's part of the brain's reward center. So this is where your dopamine receptors are, or some of them are. So it's activated by a positive emotional stimuli, positive faces, pleasant scenes, and social connection feeling, and then interpersonal warmth and feeling understood. So this one's like massive when I think about Christmas.
So this is really the opposite of the amygdala, which causes a panic response. This other word that you said that I won't attempt to pronounce triggers the dopamine happy rush of chemicals and feelings.
Yep. Which I just realized I hadn't shared that yet about nostalgia, that nostalgia releases dopamine. It helps regulate pain. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's why I mentioned like the dark dreariness of winter and Christmas and all that. It's like, or the loneliness that people experience. It regulates pain. And then you're like through releasing your dopamine. So,
well, that's really convenient because a lot of people say that cold plunges or cold showers evokes a huge dopamine release, and I hate them so much. So I'm just going to think about Christmas instead and get the same medical benefits. Yes. Christmas wins again.
Oh my. Then
Take
there's
that, Huberman. Just think about Christmas.
Literally, Huberman is a neuroscientist. Like he would
Harvard.
I am a neuroscientist dabbler.
Dilettante.
Yes, and a therapist. So, so anyway, then the last one I will mention, because there's a few other ones that I'm not going to mention because half of them I can't say the names, and the other half of them just do more of the same as the rest of the things that I'm mentioning.
Gotcha.
So the last one is the medial frontal cortex, which a lot of people know. This I feel like is almost the most talked about part of the brain. Like, I think this might be the most talked about part of the brain.
Okay.
Because this is the part of the brain where they say, oh, your brain isn't developed till 25. It's this part of your brain. It's developmental age range is from adolescence to 25. And it's not fully developed until 25.
Gotcha.
So it is the cognitive processing, social cognition, so like your behavior amongst other people's, emotional regulation, so even like fear associations, and then motivation.
Gotcha. This is also the piece that makes us human compared to other mammals like monkeys or dolphins, etc.
Yeah. Like the empathy and...
So a lot of the complexity of nostalgia and the holiday memories and all those different things happen because of the prefrontal cortex. How we interpret and receive an event probably isn't as reactionary. It's like our logic center, if that is that right?
Yep. It's like the planning, like the cognitive functioning, like planning and yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Which is probably why we get more excited about receiving a new MacBook versus when we see a plate of cookies. Although I don't know, the plate of cookies is pretty good.
I know which one you would prefer.
Yeah.
The last two things about nostalgia that I want to cover, and then we can dive into like connecting it to more of like applied aspects of Christmas to our listeners, is that the age of most nostalgia experience, so like the time period that people feel the most nostalgic for the past, is between their teens to 20s and then when they're over 50 years old. And the reason for that is those are considered the transition ages from when you're transitioning between like childhood to adulthood and then your adulthood to your end of life.
Fascinating. No, that makes total sense, because when I was growing up, I did not have great Christmases because my parents were divorcing for 6 years, essentially, of my childhood.
Rough.
And the post-divorce Christmases were also filled with a lot of natural awkwardness with post-divorce parents, right? 2 Christmases, blah, 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 blah. So I had a pretty negative association with it. And then as a young adult, I was living in a foreign country and Christmas rolled around and I was very homesick. I was missing my family. And it was the first time that like I really, really, really missed Christmas. And like it hit different. It was a feeling of like appreciation that I had never had before. And I was in my early 20s when that happened.
Fascinating.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about my teens to 20s, I think about how I don't know. It wasn't until like the last year or two that I became less nostalgic. Like I can explicitly remember memories of myself being very like longing for the past, like past memories, past experiences, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I really resonate with the idea that it's like the trying to find your footing with like your identity, like trying to feel not broken but whole is like a big coping mechanism of nostalgia. And I think I definitely used that as a coping mechanism to like try and find myself. But now that I have like I'm more certain about my like identity and feel more whole, I don't necessarily feel as nostalgic for the past.
Oh,
I feel more present.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because you mentioned before too that nostalgia is a pain reliever. And so if you're experiencing any kind of pain now, and nostalgia kind of removes that or numbs it at least a little bit, I could see that longing for it. And then on the flip side of the coin, I think about my parents who are over 50 by quite a bit. And I've kind of always, I don't want to speak for them, but it has just felt like a strong pressure to recreate the holidays instead of moving forward and creating a new holiday tradition. It feels like they're grasping for the past to recreate now instead of allowing the families to evolve. For example, they want to have Christmas at their homes versus at their children's homes where their grandchildren are now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with what we're talking about here. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that. It's like, why does grandma and grandpa care so much about Christmas looking a type of way or continuing a tradition that nobody necessarily loves as much or what have you? I feel like in that transition period and they're getting older, so there are more aches and pains. There's more pain in life. They want to recapture some of the magic through nostalgia
and alleviate some of their like discontinuity and feeling maybe like a lack of connected to the world or family or self. I'm not sure. Can't speak for them, but yeah.
And you also mentioned loneliness as a trigger for nostalgia.
Yes.
And of course, aging parents, empty nesters, they're going to feel more lonely.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say like that this like really diving into the science behind this like helped me feel a lot more like understanding and empathetic to family and how they act around the holidays, because I think I've only known your parents when they were 50 and up, like
Sure.
they over 50 years old. So I can imagine like maybe back in like younger years, maybe it wasn't like this in your family. Like maybe it was more just like focused on like the present and like what was going on in your families and stuff. But yeah, with them being empty nesters and stuff, you can definitely tell.
Yeah. We would love to hear from you, our listeners, what your experience has been like.
Yeah.
In the comments, or you can send us a message, ittakes2show@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what your experience is with this. Have you felt nostalgia? Do you feel like your parents or you've got you are a young adult, or you have young adult children that you're experiencing this renewed sense of love for the holidays or Christmas? We'd love to hear about it. We have more to cover. We've got a lot of really good stuff. Let's just take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Continuing our conversation about why nostalgia has such a powerful physical influence on our behavior and on our experiences when December rolls around.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of connect what we talked about before the break of just like, what are the dangers of nostalgia? There are some like downsides to it, because there is a excessive amount of nostalgia can be detrimental to people. So they yearn too much for the past, leading to less focus on the person's present. It's harmful to idealize the past and to not recognize how it's not inherently better. So if you view the past as inherently better than your present, then that can be harmful to you mentally.
Well, I need you to repeat that, because I think that's going to hit different. That is such a poignant point, because I think we hear that all the time. Oh, but the good old days. Back in the day, things were better.
Yeah.
Back in my day, blah, blah, blah. And so just repeat that one more time.
Okay.
Because I think it is so, so important not to idealize the past.
Okay. Excessive amounts of nostalgia make it harmful to idealize the past, seeing it inherently better, but ultimately it's in the past and out of your control. And in your present, it is just as good.
Wow. I think about the pandemic, which obviously uprooted tons of norms and traditions. And that did happen in March. And I feel like a lot of people did kind of still celebrate. But those who didn't, I'm sure that caused a massive nostalgia reaction. One of my coworkers, Matt Farmer, he is a researcher of nostalgia specifically. And I would love to pick his brain on this, because I'm sure he has some data on buying behavior and human behavior post-pandemic. But it's really hard in a post-pandemic world not to idealize the past. Mm-hmm. Remember when everybody got together and there wasn't all this social distancing and there wasn't all this, fear, blah, blah, blah. And so it's so easy to, and even think about like technology. I'm sure our parents and grandparents are saying, before the internet and before cell phones and before this, like Christmas was so much better because people didn't have their face in their phones. And there's like a lot of idealizing of what Christmas used to look like. And people are chasing that instead of just living now with these new relationships, with this new society and this new culture that we find ourselves in. And that's important. I think that's important to be at least aware of. It doesn't mean you have to change anything in your life, but just to be like, oh, like I should just really enjoy this moment.
Yeah. Because like I said, it's ultimately in the past and you can't get it back. Like it's that feeling that you think that you had, you can't go reverse time and experience it again. Like, and I think that traditions you can like kind of like rebirth the feeling a little bit.
Yeah.
But it creates this expectation that it's going to be how you view it in the past, but your memory has already changed it to all inherently better instead of what you experience, Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And this leads to something that I think a lot of us experience around the holidays is holiday guilt.
Yeah.
And then unmet expectations leading to disappointment.
Yeah. I guess to wrap up really fast, like last like bits that I really wanted to hit home is like with this excessive amount of nostalgia and like the bad parts of it, it prevents you from experiencing who you are in the present and making connections and memories in the present. And so I really wanted to hit that home of like, if you are resonating with this of like, oh, I'm kind of living in the past and in the nostalgia, like the remedy to that is to redirect your brain to what's in the present. What are the new connections I can create? What are the new things that I can experience now? But you can still love the past. Nostalgia is not bad. It's just in excessive amounts. And then also with that, because it releases dopamine, it can be addictive to be nostalgic. And I kind of think that's where people get like in their older years, because they are like in pain and uncomfortable. So they just sit and long for that, and it makes them feel good. But then that creates like an addictive pattern in your brain.
Right. And that creates, first off, that is so potent. That is potent information. And it's so powerful in that when you have a high expectation for the holiday, it creates a performance component that's not genuine. Mm-mm. That's not authentic. Mm-mm. That's not an inherent part of what is currently being experienced now. And that's hard. And it's hard to not have what you once had before. But to that point that you're making, I think we aren't suggesting to people, hey, like uproot all your traditions because you can't ever recreate the past. No, that's not what we're saying.
No.
What we're saying is allow traditions to evolve. Allow them to exist in its current state with people in where they are in their current lives. Another great example is, let's say somebody's going through an excessively financially hard time. I mean, there was over 300,000 tech sector workers who were laid off this year. That's just the tech industry.
Wow.
And Spotify, negative shout out to Spotify, who I do love and I'm a patron of, and also host this podcast. So maybe I shouldn't throw too much shade. But
watch it.
Spotify Wrapped, I love it. It's great. But then they released, they let go 17% of their workforce in layoffs right before Christmas. So what? Whoa. Yeah, right? Brutal.
At the same time?
Yep. Spotify Wrapped drops. Hey, thanks for all of your work with Spotify Wrapped. See ya. Right before Christmas.
And it probably doesn't really get talked about because everyone's stoked about Wrapped.
Yep.
So they have all this positive press going on. And all this like people. Oh, whoa. Yep. Wow.
So let's say you are hosting an event and your brother or your uncle or your niece got let go from their profession just a couple weeks ago, and them traveling to your event that is out of state, or even if they just arrive and they're sunken and sad and stressed and worried, we don't want them to feel like they have to perform for Christmas, that they have to put on this facade of happiness, that people are valid in even being sorrowful or experiencing whatever it is they're experiencing during the holidays. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want to force our family members or friends to act in a way that is representative of what we associate with Christmas, which is joy and happiness and frivolity and joviality and like all that.
Yeah.
We want people to just be okay with where they're at and to not feel guilty if you feel that way. Don't shame people if they aren't meeting your expectations, and don't feel like you have to perform for the holidays, because it's going to be a great holiday because you're there. And that's kind of what we're trying to say.
Yep. Yeah.
Being present.
Yep. I think that wraps like so much of it so well that if we did want to go more in depth on like the guilt and unmet expectations, we could do that as well.
Okay. I do. You know what? We talked about Spotify. As a marketing professor, there were some Christmas nostalgia twists that I wanted to bring up, if you're all right with it.
Yes.
All right. But before we do, let's take our final break of the podcast. Okay. I'm circling back to the original question. When I say the word Christmas, what's the first thing that comes to mind? But different. Clarissa, what's the first commercial or TV ad that comes to mind when I say Christmas?
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola? Okay, which one?
The polar bear one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super cute.
Yeah, but like now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm actually thinking of like more like Target for some reason. Like maybe it's the red and the white, and I don't know. That came to my mind just now.
Yeah. Well, to answer the teaser question of Coca-Cola and advertisement, that red and white suited Santa was created by Coca-Cola.
That's right.
For the purpose of creating an association between the consumer, Christmas, and Coca-Cola.
So interesting.
So, and this was I think it was 1939, I think is when this started happening. But yeah, so that red suited Santa was created purely by Coca-Cola as a marketing campaign that has just become the norm societally, internationally, for what Santa looks like.
Whoa.
Crazy,
yeah,
huh?
right during that time period, because you were telling about the history of Christmas, and it's right in that time period of, how do I put it?
Between World War I and World War II.
Yeah, but you were saying the early 1900s esque time period was like when it changed from what Christmas used to be to what we know it today.
The commercialization, the gift giving,
consumerism,
like all that stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. The other commercial that comes to my mind is the M&Ms. With with the two M&Ms, they walk in on Santa, and Santa turns around and the two M&Ms say, "Oh, he does exist," and then Santa says, "Oh, they do exist," and then they faint. It's classic, right? Well, just take everything that we've talked about with nostalgia and recognize that businesses know this. Mm-hmm. They have scientists and neuroscientists and psychologists in the name of marketers that understand that this very strong physical reaction to Christmas can be targeted by products through something called branding. So branding is taking a concept like Christmas. When I say Christmas, we imagine all these things, and tying it to value through a narrative. So the idea is if you are having Christmas and you have Coca-Cola, that you'll only have a more Christmassy Christmas. It'll be more happy, and there will be better snow, and there will be a warm fire and all these things, even though Coke doesn't have any of that value inherent within the product. It's just a fizzy cola drink. But they've done a great job of tying that story of Christmas into their product.
So true.
And there's so many products. Gingerbread houses and gingerbread cookies. Yeah. That is such a staple of Christmas. We don't know. I mean, I'm sure we could research and look it up. I should have done that.
Oh, interesting. Another one. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Or the chocolate oranges.
Chocolate oranges.
Yeah.
It's almost like marketing easy mode to insert your product into a nostalgic holiday like Christmas.
Whoa.
It's incredible. But anyway, when a company can connect its brand to a deeply emotional experience or concept and attach itself to it, you're more likely to associate that experience with the product, just like we discussed with the amygdala and the other one that's like the opposite of the amygdala, and the hippocampus. And so then whenever you think of something like Christmas, that product association kind of attaches itself to it, and then you value it more. You're more likely to buy it. You're more likely to interact and engage with it.
Whoa.
And so I'm gonna bring this into one final spin before we wrap up. What is the first Christmas movie that you think of when you hear Christmas?
Elf.
Will
Yeah, that's mine
Ferrell.
at least.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic. Mine is Christmas Story.
Oh, okay.
Little Ralphie.
Home Alone was another one.
Home Alone. Yep, absolutely. Die Hard. Only because of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. See, Brooklyn Nine-Nine did a good job of making me associate Die Hard with Christmas.
I've never even watched that.
Yeah. A lot of debate, a lot of contentious debate about whether it's actually a Christmas movie or not.
Funny.
But yeah, so I think about like the Christmas rom-coms, and I feel like we as a culture and society are so much more likely to find Christmas rom-coms palatable during Christmas, during December. Even though the plots are so predictable and cheesy, the dialogue is awful, the actors are B-list at best. But for some reason, like, we sit in these shows, even though they're terrible, and we're like, this is so good. Like, why is that? Why?
Honestly, it's the emotions that, like, at one point you watched that movie and you had some type of positive emotional experience, and then you just try and recreate that around the holiday. And it's just like this time period where we like have such a strong association of things for this time period. But yeah, like the movie that came to my mind is I think it's called Christmas Shoes. I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure it's like somewhat Christian based, but yeah, B-list actor, maybe even like D-list actor, like not good, like just so like indie and not done that well. But it's like about this little boy who buys his mom Christmas shoes, and like it just is like you cry and you feel like so many emotions. And then for some reason that became like my favorite Christmas movie forever. Now that I'm like a little bit more of an adult, I'm like, no, not really. But you know, it's just interesting.
But I guarantee if you went to a holiday party and they had that movie on, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this movie
from my childhood.
Yeah, and it would hit different.
Yeah.
But if that movie came on in June, you'd be like, the hell? Like, I'm not going to watch this, like, skip. Like, that's weird, right? Like, it has to be in that December. Maybe it hits that nostalgia a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Meta nostalgia. Ready?
Tell me.
Think about, I just had this thought, brand new thought. Think about how Christmas movies, so many of the plot lines are people going home to their childhood neighborhoods for the holidays and experiencing nostalgia.
Oh my gosh.
Like that one I was trying to tell you.
Nostalgiaception. The
Ryan Gosling one. When you were like, what's your favorite Christmas movie? I was like, I don't really know if I have one, but I really like this one lately. Like, I think it's Home for the Holidays or something, but it's Ryan Gosling when he goes home he's like in LA, like really big shot now. He goes home to like his small town and like sees his high school crush, and she like thinks that he's like a douchebag in the present, and then but he's like, I'm still like the lovable guy you knew, you know. Anyway, isn't that weird? The whole like person going home for the holidays is all nostalgia.
One of my favorite Christmas songs, I'll be home for Christmas.
I can't wait to hear that how that sounded on the mic.
Oh yeah, which is also funny because that song is about actually not making it home for Christmas. It's actually a very sad song if you listen to the lyrics.
Oh jeez,
but it's a beautiful song.
Thanks for ruining it.
To that point, though, the number one album sold by Mariah Carey, the legend, the queen, the icon, her Christmas album. It's the number one sold Mariah Carey album, most streamed album.
Whoa.
So think about that.
Because she's like not like that's not what she probably went into being a singer as. You know what I mean?
No, totally. And that's at Frank Sinatra. I'm pretty sure it's similar. Like his Christmas album is the most bought and played. And I think it's because it is. It's two of our favorite things. It is nostalgia and our favorite musician combined.
Whoa.
And I think it transcends genres. So if you're not a Mariah Carey fan, but you're a Christmas fan, you'll be like, oh, I love this song. So that is just another whole marketing, nostalgia tie-in. That's just fascinating to think about.
Yeah. What is that Mariah Carey one that is, I cannot place my finger on the lyrics, but it's so popular. It's
like the most
popular. It's like the gave your heart 1 year, the next year gave it away.
Oh yeah.
I can't even think of what it's called.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna overlay the song right now over the podcast.
That would be great.
And we're gonna look so dumb for not remembering it.
Oh my gosh,
it's like the most iconic.
It is.
Mariah Carey
it's the
song.
One that I think of.
Oh, I can't. Because you know what's stuck in my head? Dun 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 dun.
Oh my gosh. Okay, really, I was just thinking for book club this month, I also, like the book club I'm in, they read a book called The Holidays, like DAZE. And it also kind of plays on the nostalgia feeling. Like, I just think that, like, I feel like Christmas was born out of a place of, like, darkness in this wintertime and trying to cope with it, but then perpetuated because of nostalgia and tradition. And it's wild.
That is, you know what? That is a great segue into our takeaways, Clarissa. What did we cover in depth today about Christmas Psychology 101?
We covered that nostalgia is a very powerful emotion or function of your brain, really.
Yeah, it's more than emotion.
It's much more than emotion.
Yeah.
It's a very important part of your brain function, and in excessive amounts, it is not good for you, and you should definitely live more in the past. Or wow. I feel like I should redo that, but maybe I'll just leave it. Okay.
She's stuck in the past, okay? It's really hard for all of us to be in the present, but we're all working on it.
We're working on it. It is it's important to live in the present, not in the past. And that nostalgia helps you cope with many things, which is probably why your family members expect certain things from you or make you feel guilty about not doing holidays as they once were. So next time that happens, maybe you could educate them about nostalgia and how living in the present is really good for you as well.
And the only other takeaway I wanted to add was that companies use branding to hijack the nostalgia to hijack the nostalgia function of the brain. Last fun fact. There is an economic trend. Every time there is a recession, there is a peak spike of nostalgia products. When people have less money, they will actually spend more money on nostalgia than prior. That's actually why a lot of people feel that Pokemon resurged during the pandemic. I mean, Pokemon Go was prior to that, but like the love for the card game and a lot of the 90s nostalgia that Gen Z is pumped about was because a lot of the millennial and Gen X and baby boomer parents were reintroducing this through the nostalgic purchases that they were making. Nostalgic movies and media. Anyway,
so powerful.
Right? Like it has completely shaped our culture now.
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
That reminds me, I can't exactly remember all the categories, but there was like 3 forms of nostalgia. And I think one of them was like social or societal nostalgia, and it's for like eras or time periods and not necessarily. And then the other ones were more like personal nostalgia or like, you know, experience nostalgia. But like there is nostalgia for specific time periods.
Wow. Man, we could talk about this all season long, but we've got to leave you with our fun date idea and connection question. We'll let you get on with your holiday season.
All right. The date idea is to watch a Christmas movie together. You can first argue about which Christmas movie is better before you choose one. But you should also incorporate some treats and cozy blankets and cuddling. Maybe even some nostalgic treats might be a good. Or a nostalgic movie.
Nice.
And in that, incorporate the connection question, which is, what are the most nostalgic aspects of Christmas for you?
Oh, I like that.
To get to know your partner better in their world.
There you go. I love that. Well, from us at It Takes Two, Clarissa and Charles here, wanting to wish you a very happy holidays. We also would love to know, what is your favorite Christmas movie? Yep. Maybe we should make a poll. I'm gonna make a poll. We're gonna do a poll on our Instagram at It Takes Two Show. So please like, comment, subscribe, follow, all the good stuff. You all know what to do. But yeah, we're going to post a poll about the best Christmas movies, and we'll talk about it next week. Or in a future episode. Maybe not next week. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll let the people know.
I think it could be fun to watch the winner.
Yes.
Do you know what we should do? And then we should commentary on it.
Yes. An It Takes Two breakdown of your favorite Christmas movie.
We might need to do this before Christmas, so that is relevant.
You're right.
They will nominate their movie.
Favorite. Okay. Yeah.
That works. That's a good word. And then we'll post like all the nominations, and we'll have votes on those ones, because maybe some people are like, oh, this is the most nostalgic favorite Christmas movie, but then they see somebody else's nomination and they're like, oh, no, that's the one.
The Grinch is the best.
Then we'll watch it and maybe we'll even do like a live commentary podcast. Not the live for them, but like we'll have our mics.
That's a great idea.
That way we'll like pause the show and be like, blah, 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 this just happened.
That's a great idea. I love this idea. We're going to do it. So please make your submissions. We would love to get as much community engagement on this as possible. This would be fun.
We just like spontaneously decided to do this.
Literally just decided
decided. We were just asking you to follow our Instagram, which is It Takes Two Show. And now we're going to do a whole bit on it. So
love it.
I hope you tune in to enjoy.
All right. Well, this is Charles.
And Clarissa signing off.
Now just remember, for things to get better,
for me and you, it takes two. Last Christmas.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Last Christmas.
I wish I did that in better tone.
The very next day you
gave it away. This year.
Save me from tears. We got something special.
It's still recording.